Terry Roche. I sincerely hope we are recording this because, as you and I, the audience doesn't know this, I'm having all sorts of technical problems. The joys of doing podcasts with the technical problems. But look, it's a pleasure. Terry, it's so good to have you on the show. That is David Anderson talking market data. Let's hope our recording comes out, but we'll see at the end. As I said, let's kick off with a couple of things. First of all, I know you so well. I remember, I think, meeting you probably right in the early 2000s when you were at HSBC. So we really have known you for a long time. It was those short trousers that you used to wear were very fetching, I thought. That school uniform, I wish. So tell us a little bit about your illustrious career and then also a little bit about MarketsIO, and then we'll get into the meat.
Well, David, thank you for having me and for those very kind words. Yeah, Terry Roche, industry veteran, I think is fair enough to say. Started at Telerate, for those who remember that, back in the 1980s. A bit of a stint at Salomon Brothers during the Liar's Poker days. Spent a couple of decades at banks and then information providers running mostly technology division. And now at MarketsIO. Founded MarketsIO back in 2018 with Bob Bonaguro, who we'll probably talk a little bit about. Bob is probably the premier data developer, form developer in capital markets history, the most prolific, the most used software in the industry's history. And Brian Stevens, who's a brilliant engineer out of London, spent most of his career in banks, although all of us at some point in time, or it seems that most of us do a stint at Reuters somewhere along the way. And
you and me both.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a once great firm that built amazing things. And we built the company taking a look at the market, taking a look at the legacy of lockin and vendor control. And as an independent software company, our mission is to commoditize market data infrastructure and utilitize the distribution of data. We think that the model in capital markets has been in stasis for far too long. It's all proprietary, and we're dedicated to empowering everyone. We're never going to own data. We're never going to be in conflict with our clients or information creators. And we think that there's a much brighter future ahead for data in capital markets.
By the way, I'm going to look up in the Oxford English, utilitize. I wonder if that's a real word, but it's a good word. I like it.
Yeah, I think you could find that somewhere in the CEO's dictionary or something. It goes along with concretize.
I do it all the time. I'm dreaming up new words, but they all have meaning and feeling and what have you. Let's get into the meat of this. Again, one thing I'm trying to avoid in all these podcasts, I'm really tempted to say, do you remember the old days, Terry? You remember when which you and I would love, but actually the younger generation will just find so boring. So I'm trying to be on point and where we're at now and the future. So set the scene a little bit. You started to set the scene when you actually described setting up MarketsIO, but how do you see the current, I suppose there are two broad sectors that I view, the market data sector, the actual data itself and the delivery of the data. And then there's market data systems, MDS for short, although I've also heard MDDS, market data distribution systems. So there's two parallel sectors of the industry. Tell us the story, what you see going on there, what you see some of the big issues that prompted you to bring MarketsIO into existence?
To be able to respond to that question, you have to talk about the legacy a little bit, about how did we get here? So capital markets has a first mover disadvantage. So the technology for data was built, going back all the way to 1969, Quotron, and the amazing things that Reuters and Telerate did in the 70s and then 80s.
Green screens. It was all green screens, wasn't it?
Yeah,
orange screens sometimes.
Yeah, I used to carry them around at Salomon Brothers until the local 3 Union guys got.
They were big. They were really big. Some of them.
Actually, they were little 9-inch monitors
but they
for
were very
all the
deep,
broker
weren't
screens. Yeah, but then the Telerate one got to be, they were little faux wood laminate on the side.
We're slipping into that.
Yeah, it was great stuff. So all of this was built, pardon me, allergies are killing me. All of this was built before there was any standardized technology, before there was the internet, before there was TCP/IP, before there was HTTP for the internet for sharing information. So it's all proprietary technology built by legends in the industry who we won't go over. And that largely was solidified in the early to mid 1990s. So the primary platform used in capital markets was written by Bob Bonaguro. in 1995 and 1994. Millions of lines of code have been added. It's running aggregation and distribution for one of the major market data providers that we built during my tenure at Thomson Reuters. But it's old technology. It's proprietary. But while it still is operating fine, the industry is seeing, what our customers tell us is that they're seeing consistent price rises that are also capricious. So prices are going up dramatically. Commercial policies, our customers tell us, are changing dramatically, depending, it seems, on the situation that customer has with the vendor. And our clients have become rather concerned about the durability and the future of this platform. So for what our clients are telling us, they haven't seen a lot of development in over a decade. They're worried about the size and the makeup of the development team, which used to be rather robust and tremendously capable, and simultaneously seeing dramatic price increases without a corresponding increase in capabilities. And people are starting to worry, where really is the risk? Is the risk in staying on what we have, or is there a better path forward for a far more energized and engaged independent technology capability to start to help to obtain for the clients, for the consumers, independence of their technology operation and independence of data sourcing?
Just stopping you there, I wrote, because I knew you were going to talk about legacy and lock-in. I was thinking about legacy, and I wrote down a note, and I had sort of two different ways of looking at legacy. One way, which I think is where you're coming from, I'm saying it in fruitier language, it's something that's old and a bit decrepit, is if something's legacy. But then another, slightly more positive way of looking at it, it's mature and well understood. There's two sides to a coin, aren't there?
Look, there certainly is. And technology moves forward, right? The pace of technology is rapid. The clients that we're working with, they've asked themselves whether or not they're seeing a future with where they are. Because it's about what happens in the future. Can you grow together? Is there, our clients wonder, a concern around obsolescence? And what will that mean to them? So it does what it does on the TIM for what we built 15 years ago. It's still there, but there are advancements. And if there is a path to be able to easily transition, to significantly cut your cost, and then dynamically develop the platform for the needs that you have in moving forward as more and more information is being used, more and more information is being shared. And if all of this helps you to participate in a more open interaction of data across the market, then taking a look at staying on what you have in the past and arguing about what bills should you pay, which are changing by an order of magnitude. And some of our customers are saying to us, arguing with these legacy vendors about these bills is like arguing about the bar bill on the Titanic. Does it really matter, or should I be looking for my next conveyance?
Legacy. I mean, I'm not a technical person, but I've been involved and worked with people on the technology side. And I remember when I used to work at Reuters, there were quite a few systems. Again, I'm showing my age now. I remember Reuters Monitor, which was the first page-based system. And for a long time while I was at Reuters, there was this strong desire, I would go as far as say desperate desire, to switch it off, because maintaining a legacy system was expensive, difficult, and it didn't have the functionality that newer systems did. But the problem, as I remember with legacy, is you've still got a few users clinging onto it who say, over my dead body, will I let you switch that off? So many of my critical businesses, applications, whatever it is, are running on that thing, and therefore don't you dare switch it off. So it's enormously difficult to switch something off, a whole system off. And then just hearing what you're saying, I mean, is it really the case that a legacy system can't be constantly refreshed and changed? And do you have to rip something out in its entirety and replace with something new? Again, which angle are you coming at this from? Are you saying rip out the entirety of that thing, that legacy thing, and put in something new and shiny? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And pardon me, sorry about my allergies just killing me this time of year.
Let's go back to winter, Terry. Forget summer. Let's have winter back.
So yeah, we are saying it, but here's the thing. Here's the most important thing to keep in mind. We are entirely backward compatible. Our platform, EventStream, is entirely backward compatible with the antique legacy platform. So there's no ripping out. So all of our consumers' data feeds, applications, desktops will all work. We've had clients go into POCs and they look at us and give us a call. Like, what is this alchemy? How does this just simply work? Because a vendor had open sourced their APIs. We have the most functional, capable, easiest to use API in the industry. And clients have migrated, and downstream consumers have no idea that it's actually happened. The applications haven't had to recode. The data feeds haven't had to be changed. The desktops work out of the box. There's no downstream impact. When then you obtain a significantly lower cost of ownership, a significantly better resilience, and a significantly better entitlements environment, it's a win across the board for the customers, and it de-risks migration to a modern, open, independent technology that you could rely on for the next generation.
You wrote on some of the notes when we were planning what we were going to talk about. There's the risk aversion question. That scenario you've just painted, I buy into that. I believe that. But then, being the cynic in me, I say, okay, so you unplug from one system and you plug it in, and it all works. And it does all work. And it's particularly pertinent with all the technical problems I'm having today. It all works until it doesn't work. It all should work. It all, in theory, should work. It all does work for a period of time, and then something stops working, and then you're, that's the fear that people have. So how do you reassure people that, and you're doing it, you believe it, you've done everything you think you need to do, but there's always some, or there can sometimes be, not always, there can sometimes be some lurking something that just throws the proverbial spanner in the works.
Sure.
How do you navigate that?
No, that's true. And the way you navigate it is the clients actually navigate it. So these are long lead items to sell to a customer, to have a customer adopt them. So after a customer tests and tests again and soak tests and stress tests and does the most extreme amount of testing, then placing things into a development, then cutting over part of the environment, there's months and months to more than a year of testing that's gone on, and our technology is rock solid. We've taken a long time to build this, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why it's taken us 6 years to build the entire suite we have is because of our deep familiarity and being customers and having built the previous 3 generations of this technology. We, more than anyone other than the consumers, know really what it takes to deliver. Just as important in being a small company, if I may add, before we wrote a single line of code, we built an automated test environment. Now that in and of itself isn't so earth-shattering. It's fairly common today. But we run over 10,000 tests on all of our software. We're able to test individual components. We're able to test full waterfall installations. When there have been smaller bugs that we've seen at customers, we're able to turn those around within a day typically. So there's a combination of working really closely with the customer, having them validate over a period of time through all of their stress testing, and the seriousness for which we take availability, performance, and wrapping it with probably the most advanced automated test environment that's associated with platforms in market data, at least for market data distribution platform.
Let me hit you with a couple of other thoughts on this. Hit you is not a very good choice of words. Let me inquire into the topics. The two that I want to, I'll start with one and I'll tee up the other and we'll talk about it. So that phrase you've used, lock-in, and it goes back to this idea of being able to unplug one and plug it into another, because the phrase lock-in implies you can't unplug, it's locked, you can't pull the cable out, it won't let you, metaphorically. I wrote down a list of some of the things that I'm aware of which sometimes creates that lock-in. There's data models, there's symbology, there's APIs that I suppose represent symbology and data models. They're linked, but they're slightly different. There's contractual obligations. What are the various things that you've had to fight your way through to remove that lock-in, to allow people not to be locked in?
Lock-in is a bit of a journey. Yeah. So I think you touched on those things that are there, and they're all proprietary things. So your API, you're locked into the API. And frankly, and I'll put my hand up because we released an API under my direction. wasn't great. It was kind of difficult to use before starting MarketsIO. So if you're able to have a standard interface that you could write a consumer or a provider in a day or a couple of days versus months or a few months versus the legacy, that's a positive thing. We also, since we're talking about independence, we provide the source code to our clients for our APIs. So then that does two things. One, you can standardize across other platforms that we're typically contractually prohibited from interfacing to, right? Or so that the client can get a greater benefit out of using a suite of APIs that then they can own and control across the entirety of, say, their front office, middle office, whatever have you. That is a big deal to have a standard. And that is one of the things that starts to make the technology more of a commodity, more of a utility, which it should be. The internet is viewed as a commodity. It's viewed as a utility. So should the technology, we would argue, for data ingestion, distribution, creation, etc. It should be the same. There's no reason in 2025 why everyone is stuck on proprietary
When you say
things.
open source, is that open source there in the highly unlikely and I hope never happen situation where you guys disappeared, they could then carry on? Or again, excuse my sort of partial understanding of the concept of open source. I remember, and again, you probably remember Tibco way back when would allow anybody to take their basic elements and then sort of create their own flavors of it. And that was great. It was highly flexible. You could do whatever you wanted with it because it was sort of open. But then everybody created different versions, and the support overhead of multiple flavors of roughly the same thing, but each company had done it differently. That, to my mind, was seen as a downsize of it. Am I using the phrase right? Was that open source? What I mean, open source? Help me out here. What exactly is open source? I mean, I sort of know what it is.
Tibco was a toolkit, and I think early on they generated most of their revenue out of consulting fees before it became licensing fees. So that's, I mean,
so you're not doing a Tibco.
No, hugely successful model, and Vivek Ranadivi and Murat Sanmez do all the credit in the world for what they built and that team built. No, what we're saying is that we develop, manage, and maintain the APIs to our platform, and we use our own APIs. Our platform, event stream, our entitlements, autonomy, our Genesis high performance data gateways, tick tool environment for integration to time series databases, Excel interfaces, etc. And what we're saying, though, is that if you become a client of ours, we'll give you the source code to the API suite so that then if we don't perform and another platform comes along one day and you want to migrate to that, go ahead. It keeps us honest. And or if you're a client and you really like our API and you want to use it for this platform and that platform and something else, go right ahead, write to it, create your own branches that then you go ahead and maintain. And we think that if we're going to be telling a story of independence, then we should live it. So if we don't perform, take our APIs, kick us out, or extract greater value from them.
I wrote something down here on my notes, and again, out of the frying pan into the fire. Is there a danger that you just switch from one lock-in, and you go to another one? And you're saying not, so I'm picking up on that.
Because we provide the source code of our APIs to our clients, if we don't perform, then they could go ahead and write to another platform and not have to change anything downstream. Similarly to what we're able to accomplish today in the legacy environment from leaving the legacy platform to our modern event stream platform, no data feed has to change, no application has to change, no desktop has to change. The only thing that changes is you get a better platform with greater resilience. For instance, the existing paradigm is if you have a data feed problem, you have to cut over the entirety of a data feed to another data feed, even if you have a partial cache failure. If there is a single instrument that goes stale in a data feed in event stream, and we see that it's live and the platform sees that it's live from your secondary data feed or another feed that's in, it automatically switches over. We have fault tolerance down to the instrument level that makes it more efficient. You don't have to have as many resilient feeds, and there's, tremendous benefit in that. And it's one of the things that Bob Baraguro has been wanting to bring to the market since we created the company, and we're very excited about providing greater resilience, and we provide greater performance and greater scalability.
You read my mind. I mean, I was going to go into, because the story I'm hearing from you is, look, you can sort of unplug that legacy and plug it, and everything will work the same. It'll do the same. And that's a good thing. People like doing the same because they've already got that running. But that isn't very sexy or whatever, because really what you want to do is do some things better. So obviously doing something the same is a good thing. And you've just now given us one of the sort of examples of the new, cool, different, better stuff. Give us a couple of other ones. Not the whole list, but yeah, a couple of other really big. I've got time for the whole list of wonderful things you do.
So the platform itself performs event stream, performs all of the features that the markets come to know and rely upon, which a lot of folks don't know about because they never built it or they never ran it. And that's why we strongly feel, and our customers tell us, that we're the only true alternative to everything that they've used over the years.
Because you replicate it all, but in your own way. Is that the right way of describing it?
Well, since we had created the concepts that have been used, we from scratch have reimagined and rebuilt those things as entirely new concepts. For instance, we're just under 10% of the legacy code base. So everything we have is entirely new. And, after you have decades of experience, hopefully you learn from that and do things a bit better. And that's what we've done. But listening to a lot of what you're saying in other podcasts around data management, in other entitlement systems forever, anyone could log in as David Anderson, whether or not you're David Anderson or not. Ours is fully authenticated. So be it to an application or to a user, our entitlements are authenticated. You know where it's going. We have a far more granular unit of count that is not more, but it's in line with exchange and other vendor commercial policies now, because the legacy bits don't meet the modern commercial policies. We combine entitlements and inventory, our capabilities. So why are they different systems? And reporting, it never made sense to us. We combine that in a way that the clients can define their own business inventory, application inventory, user profiles. It's all in one tool. It doesn't need to be in separate tools. And we're able to apply it against any type of data, reference data, real-time data. And then we're moving on later this year with a significantly higher capability in how we'll be handling data as it would transit from application to application inside of an organization. And our goal is to make audits obsolete and completely unnecessary, because the client will have a complete transparency and reportability of where all the data goes in their organization.
I mean, that's the nirvana, isn't it? A lot, again, as you say on my podcast, quite a few people have been talking about this. And I don't think it's come up on the podcast yet, but something I've definitely heard in some of the FISD cross-community discussions is the fact that data providers, exchanges, aggregators or whatever, they come up with these weird and wacky, very maybe logical policies from their individual perspective. And one that's difficult to manage. But the point I was getting to is sometimes customers say, look, we're not necessarily disagreeing with the logic of that policy. We can sort of see where you're coming from. We can sort of see why. Maybe we do disagree, but we still recognize, you're right to impose that policy on us. But we just don't have the technical capability. What you've asked us to do, stand on our heads and drink a glass of water and put your left hand out and juggle 3 balls. We can't do that. I mean, it's just physically impossible. So are you hearing that same sentiment from some customer firms?
Yeah, most definitely. And I think, as some of our clients have said to us, that they recognize that there's an inherent conflict of interest if you're a technology provider, if their primary business is data, because you may not obtain all of the capabilities that you want to manage down your data spend, right? It's an obvious thing, and we hear that a lot from clients. And it's one of the primary reasons why within our charter that Bob, Brian, and I agreed before, or when we were starting the firm, that we will never own data. We will never take a revenue share of anyone's data. We don't want to be in conflict with any data creator, any data consumer. We want to provide the very best tools available so that the industry can operate as efficiently and as transparently as it can, as it should, because we don't care if you're more efficient in managing your data and
No,
have transparency
no,
where it goes.
I see that.
And it empowers better commercial models.
On that point, I was alluding to. Can you imagine a situation still where some data provider, could be an exchange, could be a data aggregator, comes up with a commercial policy that your system literally, there just aren't the buttons to press, the things to set up, it just, it can't work? Or are you building your systems, and how do you build your systems to be able to be future proof like that? Is it possible to be future proof to the weirdest and wackiest data policy that somebody might dream up?
Being informed through decades of building these systems and decades of owning and operating them and arguing about commercials. And I think it's fair to say, and you've probably heard through your podcast, that commercial policies, particularly by some of the aggregators, have gone crazy, making things up, very capricious, consistently capricious. And clients are, there's a lot of animus that's out there in how the clients are being treated. A lot of folks feel that they're just being hit with price increases in lieu of additional value propositions, right? To keep
your
things along.
New system,
I'm coming on to that.
Can you address that? Do you address that?
Yeah. So for what we've done in autonomy, we've taken significant steps around, again, fully authenticated distribution, a far more granular unit of count, things like IP whitelisting, so you could limit where data. So some commercial policies is that data is not allowed to leave this jurisdiction or that jurisdiction. We provide IP whitelisting so that a client could control where that data is resident. Tools for the client to create their business rules, their business inventories, their data inventories. So we've gone a large step in what we've created in autonomy. And we're now moving towards the next step of assisting clients in being able to manage and have transparency as information flows from application to application in their environment, to be able to have record of where it goes, transparency of who uses it. And we think that those things combined with what we built and what we have coming up in autonomy, by and large, will satisfy the vast majority of what folks might imagine in commercial policy. Now,
and if I'm understanding you,
since our stuff is modern and we don't have millions and millions of legacy lines of code to have to wrestle with and have backward compatibility for, and since our code base is a tiny percentage of the legacy, our ability to move with the times and to respond to client or market demands is significantly better than what else that's in.
I'm hearing. I mean, picking up on that point, am I right? Is the logic that sometimes some of these, you use the word capricious, I would never use that word, but I'm hearing what you're saying. And is it that some of those policies ask a client to be very granular and descriptive of what they're doing, but if they can't be, it says, we'll just pay a big lump of money in lieu of that? But if the system allowed that customer to pick down to a granular level, then that customer could pay a smaller amount because they had gone granular. Is that the heart of the solution?
Just to be clear, the word capricious has come from our clients. It's come from.
I just like to be friendly with everybody.
I'm friendly with everybody too. I'm just relaying what we're hearing from the street.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that everybody's familiar with commercial policies where delivery used to be enterprise wide. Send it wherever, fill your boots, and then perhaps a vendor has reached the saturation of market. Well, how are we going to go ahead and then grow our revenue? I know. Let's go to a per seat fee. And the client doesn't have the ability, typically in some of these models, to enforce a per seat fee. What then happens? The negotiation ensues and someone pays money. There are things that we're trying to solve, that we're on the path to solve, that we think needs to be solved. And again, we're dedicated to creating the modern tools in deep partnership with our customers, which is gained a lot of attention from information creators, information providers as well, where we're happy to work with everyone. So this isn't an anti-information aggregator, information creator message. It's a message of being modern, fair, open, and empowered, so that this will help also folks put forward dynamic commercial models that could be of value to clients that they're not able to execute today because they don't trust what happens with the data.
I mean, let me pick up on another theme on, and it's something you and I have not talked about, but all these APIs and you've just said, you're playing with others, working with others. There is this theme of this concept of an ecosystem. Even sometimes the phrases like frenemies or cooperation or whatever. In other words, you, MarketsIO, you've got a solution, you've got a number of products, you've gone through some of them, and anybody can call you up and get a much more detailed breakdown of that. But how do you work in this context of partnering with other firms, connecting with other entities that might have some sort of application or some sort of process or something they're doing that you're not trying to do, but would link nicely with yours? What's your philosophy? What's your technical approach? What's your commercial approach to that?
Again, we're dedicated to fairness and openness. So we're, again, not owning any bid data, taking a revenue share of any data. So we approach this from the perspective of an independent technology company. Everyone should be able to use our technology to their benefit, right? And as such, we don't care who wins the data wars. Don't care in the slightest. We don't care what data clients consume. We don't care what data anyone creates or distributes. It's not our business. What we're in the business of is empowerment and independence and fairness. So there's a technology set that is the most used in the industry that is owned by an information aggregator, and there's restrictions on its use. We think that is inhibited a more dynamic utility capability to distribute data within capital markets. So why is there not a fit for purpose, real-time capability in capital markets to share information?
No,
It's largely because the technology hasn't been available. And some of the things, if I may, just to finish the thought on that, you mentioned earlier around lock-in on symbology and data model, and that's certainly there. Symbology, not so much. Data model, certainly. People are speaking different languages in the data models, and individual firms are distributing different data models sometimes for the same data. So we've started an initiative, Capital Markets Data Initiative, whereby we're working with several firms in creating standardized symbology and a standardized data model by asset class. We think, this is something that we're curating. It's not something we want to own. It's not something that we're going to monetize. But, the symbology ought to be human readable. Right? A developer should be able to read, what is that symbol? What am I going to do with it without having to constantly refer to some sort of translation table? And then regarding data models, we know a fair amount about the subject, but we're also working with firms who are contributing to it. So why is this important? If the market is going to reach true independence, then it needs to standardize. And it's not going to standardize by everyone deciding one day, okay, we all agree on this standard, and go into the basement and have a giant Frankenstein switch and cut it over, and we're over to the new thing. It will happen incrementally. It may happen from source. It may be happening in partnership with smaller information aggregators. But if the clients that we're talking to are looking for true independence to be able to source their data, then moving to an independent standard, something they could do once, is far more a digestible idea than moving from one proprietary standard, non-standard, to another proprietary non-standard. That's more the frying pan into the fire idea. You're just swapping one lock-in for another. Now, let me hasten to just finally add, this is a journey, and we have no illusions that it's anything other than that. But if the industry doesn't recognize that and agree to start to work together towards it, and it manifests itself in our gateway delivery and partnership with firms who are interested in working with us, exchanges are interested, banks, brokers, others are working with this on this, then the market can really operate as an open, commoditized utility for the exchange of information, and that's really where it needs to go.
I was intrigued when I was reading
the last
about.
decades provided.
I hope I'm coming through, Terry. We're having some technical problems. Can you hear me all right?
I hear you just fine.
Good. The Capital Markets Data Initiative, are you able to say anybody else who's actually on that, who's publicly joined that and is willing to be attributed to it? Just to get a bit of a sense of who else might be involved.
We have broker and banks that are working with us on that. We've mapped most of the FIC and options markets, cash equities. More are coming, having to do with our interaction with our clients in the data that they're consuming and or data originators are wanting to distribute in a standardized, human readable, logical way. So it's going to be a journey. It's not going to be a short journey, but if it doesn't start, then we'll never get anywhere. And, be really clear about this. There's huge benefits for those who create information, perhaps aggregators who are wanting to disrupt others, data consumers so that they could switch from one to another without ever having to switch their application data models ever again. So the logic of the benefit is really easy to understand. And we're gaining more and more interest in this subject across the board. And we manifest it in our Genesis market gateways that can provide vendor standard or standardized open symbology and data model.
Okay, I mean, going back to something I was thinking about when we were talking. I mean, you mentioned inventory, your system doing inventory management. I just so happened to have interviewed Lee Walters this week, or it was last week, but it's out, and Alistair Brooker. So Lee Walters from TRG Screen, which was the TRG Fits and the Screen Infomatch. And I think, is it Optimize, I think is their new product. And then you've got Calero, that used to be MDSL with their MDM. Those are the two big behemoths of the inventory management. Now, are they competitors, or can their inventory, those well-established, well-entrenched inventory management tools integrate with what you're doing? Is that a partnership opportunity, or is it a competitive opportunity?
Dan, I don't think much about other products and other offerings in the market. We think, what's really important is that the whole panoply of what comes together. Is there authenticated delivery? Does the consumer absolutely know where that's going? Does that authenticated delivery give comfort to the commercial provider who's giving you the information? Because you're able to clearly demonstrate that we know it went to this place, changing concepts of not having individual users that just because you're in a different location, you have to pay all over again. It enables delivery to an individual, delivery to an application, and eliminates some of this MISO stuff and double counting. So, our perspective is that, again, this all ought to be a commodity. You should be able to have standardized ingestion of data across a platform that is fit for purpose. It is modern, has important advancements, all controlled in an authenticated, granular, highly efficient entitlements capability that provides the business tools to manage your data and report it. Why? So the legacy of these things, what we're talking about is bolt-ons to legacy technology. I think that's what you're referring to. And we think that it's a heck of a lot more efficient and powerful to have this all within a commoditized technology stack to empower both the information creators and the information consumers.
Yeah, no, that was part. Yeah, I think I was getting at that. I suppose the other bit I was getting at was, and again, I was remembering my old days at Reuters, and one of the things I think they did well, we all did well when we do, is this idea of sort of third-party applications. In other words, encouraging an ecosystem of software houses, of other firms to piggyback, to leverage the machine that was working there in the middle, and that added value to the machine there in the middle. And the fact that however good that machine is in the middle, your machine being very good, it could be that not that you can't do everything, but you might not want to do everything, every single thing that the capital markets wants. The capital market wants a lot of things. I'm just curious what your sort of strategy, philosophy, and technical approach is to integrating with any other companies.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's a good call out. And it's one that we agree with. We know that our expertise is in enterprise data aggregation, creation, and distribution. We know our expertise is in entitlements management. We know our expertise is in front office trading systems. But, our is to stick to our knitting, if you will. So do we want to create time series capabilities? No, we don't. Do we want to create advanced analytics, even though it'll be there? No. Are we getting involved in AI? I mean, everyone's got some AI pitch, Could there be some benefit entitlements in the future? Yeah, that would be something that we would probably want to partner toward because it's not our expertise. We think that there is such a rich ecosystem. And as we commoditize this technology and turn it more into a utility, then yeah, everyone ought to connect to it. Everyone ought to be able to interface because net, our entire goal is focused on those who create information, those who consume it. And having that as an open-ish capability so that the whole workflow, all of the use cases can be satisfied. Yeah, we're entirely dedicated to that.
That's good. I'm conscious of the time, and I'm glad we're still talking. The audience doesn't realize the problems I had with my unstable internet connection. So I'm going to be having words with my ISP later on. So a couple of thoughts as we sort of move to the end, and I'll sort of preempt you to be thinking any sort of final points that you want to sort of ram home and get across that we didn't cover so far. But one area that I've observed in all my years in the industry, and I've worked with I work for Roche, so yeah, big behemoths and what have you. And then I've seen in my years in FISD, lots of small companies come along as well. And I have noticed that often small companies get just knocked over by the elephants, by the behemoths, or they get bought. I mean, there's an interesting, either they just get crushed or they get bought. In some cases, they rise up and take on the behemoths. But that small company versus big company scenario must be difficult. I mean, no matter how good, I don't know if it's a relevant story, but I always remember, I don't know if you knew a guy called Nick Dine of Logicscope. He always used to tell me something which was, look, David, it's like I'm going out with my product is a £20 note and I'm selling them for £10. And the customers out there say they've got no budget. The point he's trying to make is no matter how good your story is, no matter how much better you are, sometimes there's that inertia, that just, oh no, we just want to stick with what we've got. Or worse, the big company go on, I'll come down to that price. And again, the customer would rather just the devil they know. I mean, that must be a headwind you have to fight.
Yeah, it certainly that dynamic exists for a lot of folks. We're fortunate insofar as the team that we have and the credibility that comes out of the accomplishments of the team. Bob Bonaguro, every market data engineer on the planet knows that Bob is the man. He's created all of the technology that they use. Arguably, there's no one more capable, impactful, knowledgeable, and productive than Bob in enterprise.
And dashingly handsome as well.
He is.
You can tell him I said that.
Yep. His wife, Robin, I'm sure will certainly agree with that. We're also blessed with having Brian Stevens on the team. Brian started
another dashingly handsome gent. You just let the side down, Terry. That's all.
I mean, no, look, I am not only do I have a face for radio, but I'm also the dumbest guy in the company. So it works out for me. Brian is a tremendous engineer, well-known, former DAX engineer, created amazing capabilities of standardization and openness in the banks he had worked for. One of the most respected engineers on the planet. So, yeah, there is that. But a funny thing happens. We go and we sit down to front office technology teams, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, those MarketIO guys are just like us. So the way we intentionally built the team in taking Brian's front office team, and we've added tremendous architects of what used to be Bob's team in our Oak Brook West office, and our front office gang is in London, so that when we're either talking with core market data technologists or front office business people and technologists, they're instantly recognized as the folks you should be talking with. And then look, it's been a journey. We started in 2018. We're starting to really get material traction now. And traction begets traction because, all the scamps in our business, they all talk to each other and, hey, have you heard what's going on here? I've done this over there. And all of a sudden, the thing that seemed to be risky is now deemed to be, well, it's not risky. It's far more risky to stay on the path that we're on with unknown price increases in what clients tell us, technology that's become stagnant. And they don't know what the future is or if it's going to be obsoleted at some point in time. It's perhaps far less risky to substantially cut our costs, move to a modern technology. And, folks love our message about being a commodity, being a utility, and empowering data creators and data consumers to get on with the next generation of what capital markets data ought to.
So I'm hearing from you. Are you at that magical tipping point? Have you gone beyond the tipping point? Is the tipping point happening now? Is it just over the horizon? Where are we? Sorry, I'm mixing my metaphors terribly.
I'll say this, we're in a very, very good place. We've got tremendous engagement. We've got a tremendous pipeline. We feel, frankly, and of course I'm biased of that, we offer an unrivaled technological, commercial, and vision package as compared with anyone else. And the market is now desperate for a change. That, you talk to someone, we talk to some senior execs and, hey, how much did you pay for this stuff 10 years ago? Oh, okay, well, that's gone up. How much do you reckon you're going to pay in the next 10 years? And they're realizing I'm going to pay 150, 200% more. And do I like the way that the whole arc of this is going? Am I going to be more locked in or less locked in? Am I going to be more empowered or less empowered? Am I signing over more and more of my capital so that I can't do other things with it for me to be able to differentiate against my competitors, to perpetuate a legacy model that was fundamentally locked in the mid 1990s? So I think it's all the combination of those things. And, timing is maybe the most important thing in life. And we think that maybe the market really does recognize that it's nigh on time to really embrace modernity, openness, fairness, and move to a model for this century.
Terry, we're getting close to the end. Can I change the topic a bit?
Yeah, sure.
You've been in this industry a long time. I mean, I hope we've had a good chat, and you have eloquently sort of pitched the magnificence of MarketsIO, as you should. But can I take you away from MarketsIO just as an industry observer? What are you seeing in the industry? What are the big trends that you're seeing? We've only got 5 minutes to just hit us with sort of final thoughts on where we are as a market data industry in 2025, early 2025.
Yeah, I've only been doing this for 4 decades. I thought I would have been finished by now, but I'm starting. I have a very strong vision for what MarketsIO should be that I've held for some time, and I'm very fortunate to have Bob and Brian and the rest of the team to make that vision a reality instead of just a daydream for me. But as it pertains to what's going on, I mean, it's we've had this whole conversation. I think it's great that you called out this part. What's going on with information in capital markets? More and more markets are going electronic. With the sophistication of markets going electronic, what does that really mean for data aggregators? Where are customers going to be really getting their data in the future? Data that matters, data that they could use. Is the arc of the aggregator moving to something that's a different value add proposition as opposed to a core aggregation and distribution proposition? I wonder about that.
I think what I've observed is you're right. There are these markets, the capital markets, they'd be equity markets or foreign, whatever it is, as they become electronified. God, I'm making up words now. The electronification of those markets enables this automated flow of data. And you could argue, and I think you maybe are, that maybe aggregators, there's less of a need for them or whatever. But what I think I've seen this shift, and this is where the alternative data, there's just this whole flood of other data that is not from the market, but that it's useful for people in the market. If you're I mean, the classic example, what is the car parks at Walmart? Are they full or are they not? As an indication of the economy. So I think the data that you and I grew up on is diversified massively.
Yeah, that certainly changed that sort of aerial surveillance or
that's just one example. Yeah.
Yeah, or understanding the weight of the skips at manufacturing facilities. The heavier they are, the more the activity that's going on. It's a leading indicator. This has been done with shipping, particularly for fuel for the longest time. And, I didn't want to talk about AI because I wound up sounding really dumb really quickly. So I'm going to try to avoid that. But I think that...
But you can't avoid it. We can't. It just hits us constantly.
Yeah, I think there really isn't AI yet. I think it's more advanced analytics models that are being trained than true artificial intelligence. So I think it's It's a destination as opposed to an effect at the moment. And I think, those large language models around those different types of data certainly are useful. How that affects real-time trading and the type of things that we're focused on, it will to an extent on the algos that are being informed by broader data. So yeah, that will probably happen. And it's one of the reasons why everything we built is generic. We could carry any type of payload with any type of quality service. So we recognize there's that need that's coming, and you ought to be able to
It's
extract the
future
most out of
proofing.
your technology.
It's future proofing, isn't it? That
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
trick when you build something.
Yeah, it certainly is. And then, a lot of people would want to talk about cloud. I mean, cloud is fine for certain use cases. I mean, if you have an elastic compute need, cloud's great. If you have an intermittent compute need, cloud's great. If you're trying to serve desktops that have conflated data and you're not worried about predictability of data delivery because you're getting updates every 1 to 3 seconds, cloud's great. If it's a low volume, low velocity market that you're getting data for, it's great. It's inherently inconsistent though, given the virtual services. And I think it's interesting when you see folks running around saying cloud could do all of this high performance stuff. Well, yeah, it can, because they take away all of the virtual capabilities and do a test on bare metal and try to call it cloud. I mean, it's fine for using those tools for the right use cases.
Horses for courses. That
Yeah,
wonderful
that's
phrase.
right. But the whole panoply has to be supported, from on premises to proximity hosting to cloud use cases. And, it's absolutely required to have to support all of those, because no organization is going to want to have different technologies in different parts of their use cases and their workflows. So to us, it's got to be open. It's got to be standardized. It has to be able to ingest any type of data. It has to be highly rich in how all of that is controlled and authenticated and identified and delivered, resilient, more scalable, more performant than what the past is, and frankly, far, far more efficient at a dramatically lower cost.
See, what I should be doing, Terry, is, if this is on YouTube, I say, and of course, there's an affiliate link at the bottom here, and I get a small kickback, but of course, I'm not expecting. Your smile is enough of a kickback there, Terry.
You're one of the kindest people I know, David. Thank you for that.
Hey, look, we could talk for more, but we're over the 1 hour. It'll be shorter once I edit a few bits and bobs. I'm glad we survived. I kept watching. It's still saying, trying to reconnect. Make sure you have a stable internet connection. Hopefully the audience will be blissfully unaware of that. I've enjoyed this chat. I always enjoy it. We've known each other a long time, and I hope we continue to know each other for
decades and a half. And look, I really appreciate the opportunity of you having me on your podcast and getting to talk about what we're doing and how we're trying to help everyone in this marketplace. And we think that everyone should be empowered, and that's our mission.
Go for it. And on that note, I will bid you farewell, and I will stop the recording. Take care, Terry.
Thank you.